Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nick Crespo, your host for today and forever, and welcome back to another episode of the Lawyers in the Making podcast, where it is my job to focus on the unique journeys to the law and law school of professionals in the legal field and law students. Let's talk about what we're doing today, because today we have another spectacular guest. He's a University of Illinois Chicago graduate and currently works as a local financial advisor from Boca Raton, Florida. He's held past positions as a financial professional at AXA Advisors and as a financial services representative at GR Financial Group. Excited to have him on the podcast today, Mr. Frank Rekas. Welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today? Before going any further, I'd like to say a quick word about the sponsor of this podcast, Rhetoric. Back in episode 25, I had the privilege of having the CEO, Luke Yingling, on the podcast, and ever since that episode, fell in love with the product. Rhetoric takes user briefs and motions and compares them against the text of opinions written by judges to identify ways to tailor their arguments to better persuade the judges handling their cases. Rhetoric's focus on persuasion and helps users find new ways to improve their odds of success through more persuasive arguments. Know more, win more. I was able to see a demo of the product, and its cutting-edge technology and fascinating features make for a product I am proud to sponsor, and further shows the new digital era the field of law has been entering thus far on my journey doing this podcast. If you decide to book a demo, let them know Nate sent you. Be sure to check them out in the show notes below or at userhetoric.com. One word, userhetoric.com. Now, back to the show.
Hey, Nate. I'm doing great. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite. And hopefully we're going to have a great conversation.
Of course. I mean, Frank, we always come on here. We always have great conversations. It's always a guarantee. I always guarantee it every single time. But, Frank, before we get started, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
All right. So born and raised in Chicago, and definitely a Cubs fan, not a Sox fan. And if anybody who follows baseball, it's usually one or the other. I don't hate the Sox, but I just don't like them. So I'm Cubs, but I'm also an Orioles fan, and that's another story that we can get into if you want. And lived there for, since till 1993 when I moved to South Florida. Just got tired of the cold weather and shoveling snow and came down to South Florida, and nice weather. You can walk around in shorts almost any time of the year. I've been in financial services now. It'll be 33 years next month. Previous to that, I was in retail. I worked at an Ace Hardware store, ultimately worked my way up to be manager and had enough of that, and then ventured out and landed a job with a financial services company. And here I am.
Well, Frank, I love the story. I love that you escaped the cold weather, because that's something I'm trying to do. As of right now, I am in Smithtown on Long Island, so it's actually very nice today. Obviously, it is the summer, so it's supposed to be warm, but during those cold months, it gets real cold, especially when I'm up in Albany. It is absolutely freezing, sometimes below temperature. I know, living in Chicago, I've never been to Chicago, but I know it gets really, really cold there. So I'm happy you have escaped. I'm still looking to escape, but let's go. 1982, what a great year. I wasn't sure what was going on then. I wasn't even born, but you had graduated at the University of Illinois, Chicago. And
Correction, I didn't graduate.
oh,
That was the last year I attended.
oh.
Let's put it this way. We mutually agreed that I should not continue going.
So I guess I'll ask from there, what inspired you or what provoked you to not finish out the college tenure at the University of Illinois, Chicago?
I won't say that I was distracted. Maybe I'll say I wasn't as interested in schoolwork as I probably should have been. And I had an opportunity in my retail position to move up the ladder. So I took it. And the university was A-okay with it. Let's just leave it at that.
Of course, of course. I mean, listen, I've come on here. I talk about all the time how I'm not the biggest fan of school, and I've made it very much well known. I'm still getting through it though, but I understand it more than anything that I, especially, am sometimes very distracted from school through doing this podcast. but I'm still getting it done. Now you were at
Yeah.
Ace Hardware, and I'm interested in this. I'm very interested in this
All
because
right.
we always talk. I always come here and talk about those retail jobs. I worked at ShopRite for 2 years. I thought it was so valuable. So working at Ace Hardware, which doesn't seem like a big job, has definitely some parts to it that give you experience working in the real world, doing sales, talking to people, getting those soft skills. So, how was that experience, and did it improve your soft skills, as I said, as others may have experienced as well?
Well, I'm kind of an introverted extrovert, if there is such a thing. I mean, you and I can sit if you and like me and my brother and I do this all the time. We can sit in a room or somewhere for an hour, not say two words to each other, and be perfectly okay with it. Or I can be at lunch or breakfast or dinner with him or anybody and talking nonstop. So, but what it did do is it brought me out of my shell a little bit. I had to talk to people. I didn't know anything at first. I mean, I knew a nail, I knew a hammer, but I mean, I was getting questions at first, like I didn't know what the heck they were. And I always had to ask somebody else. And I came very close to being fired because I didn't know anything. They were just, everybody was doing double work because this kid didn't know anything. So I ultimately started to apply myself, and I learned how to talk to people. I learned how to have conversation. I learned how to do add-on selling. So Nate comes in to buy a gallon of paint. Hey, Nate, do you need a paintbrush? How about some paint thinner? So I started to be able to get comfortable asking additional questions to upsell, if that's the right word. And I got to know a lot of people as I moved up through the years. And I was at the same store for, it was about 9 or 10 years. And then I worked for an owner that had 3 stores. Then he opened up a fourth store. And then I went to be the manager of that store. And we took it from an empty building to 3 months later full of merchandise. That part was cool. But about a year after that, I was chasing somebody that tried to steal a leaf blower of all things. And I did catch him, and the police were like right across the street. So they came over and handcuffed him, but that was a really dumb thing to do. Um, and it was then that I decided, all right, that's it. I got to get out of here.
So you decide to get out of there. You end up being a financial services representative at New York Life Insurance Company. But what I have to ask is, since you didn't have a degree, how did you get this job?
I went on an interview. So I got a letter at home from New York Life, and I put it in the trash. It was very nondescript, other than, and I think I still have it in a file somewhere. Oh, your name came to our attention. You might be someone who fits a position that we have available. I'm like, oh, okay. I threw it in the garbage. Well, my wife, now my ex, but she came home and said, opens the garbage to throw something away, and it was face up. And she goes, "What is that?" And I go, "It's a letter from an insurance company." "Well, what's it about?" I go, "I don't know." She looks at it and she goes, "I think you should go on the interview." Okay. I went on the interview, and I was I was hired. I guess I didn't need that much skill or a degree, but and my interviewing skills were not that great because I hadn't done a lot of interviews at that point in time. I do remember at one point while I was looking to leave, going on an interview at a company that sold copiers and printers and all that, and I knew I blew it when the guy said to me, he goes, "Does the almighty dollar motivate you?" I'm like, "No, not really." I go, "It's not just about the money." So obviously I didn't get that job.
So moving forward, you jumped around a little bit, but you spent 9 years at New York Life Insurance. What was getting that first experience in the real world, and what are some things that you learned while doing that? And then why'd you decide to leave?
Um, I had a lot to learn. I mean, I barely knew what a mutual fund was at the time. I think I kind of knew what term insurance was. So it was a lot of studying. You really had to apply yourself just to learn the products, but it was also learning, how to talk to people, how to call people, the questions to ask them, what to say, how to motivate them to A, get give you an appointment, number one, and then B, motivate them to actually make a decision to move forward. And it was a long learning experience. And I remember coming home one night, a month or two in, and my head was just like pounding. And I said to my wife, I said, I don't know if I made a mistake, but man, this new career is killing me. And her response was, well, what's the matter? And I said, it's just, there's not enough going on. She actually said, you need to wear out some shoe leather. I think you should go out and knock on some doors. So I did.
And so in doing that and going to knock on some doors, like what was that sort of what were you trying to express there, I guess, in terms of actually going out knocking on people's doors, like just getting it out of you? Was it something like that?
I talked to a manager and I said, listen, I need to increase my activity. I don't have a lot going on. My friends don't really want to talk to me. They know me as Frank from the hardware store. Now I'm Frank, the financial advisor. It's not that they don't trust me, but maybe I'm not going to be around very long. I mean, the industry doesn't have a great reputation of people sticking around. So they gave me some language, and I would go to a business park. I didn't knock on doors of homes. That's not something that I was not about to do, and just walk into a business, leave some kind of brochure, ask who the owner was, ask if they were in, get a card, and call back 2 or 3 days later. And I I did that while I was in Chicago, but then I did it for about almost 4 years in Florida. Because when I moved to Florida, I didn't know anybody, and that was the only way really for me to start getting some business. And it was not easy. I probably should have quit like 5 times.
So finally making that big move to Florida with the nice weather. I hope to be there too. Like I said before, Frank, I've been to Florida like twice. I got to start going more, apparently.
Oh yeah, you got to come down.
Listen, I definitely will. Don't tempt. I mean, I'm gonna tempt myself, honestly, so I can make my way there. But going to that new place, fresh slate, but you don't know anyone. You got to start doing some networking. And I love to talk about networking. So, first, I'll ask you how important networking has been for you in your career. And how is it like starting anew again, having to make all these new friends, these new acquaintances, and actually going through and doing it?
I was nervous as you know what when I first came down. I mean, yeah, I had a year and a half under my belt of the business, but I was really just kind of getting started. And the decision to move was really made because I was early in my career. We didn't start a family yet. And I remember saying, look, if we have a family, if we start having kids, I'm not going to want to leave. I'm going to be entrenched, and then we're going to be quote unquote stuck here. At least that was what, we thought. So when I came down, I had to meet, a whole set of people at the office, new management, new trainers, new staff, new advisors. I was kind of like the new kid on the block, even though I did have a year or so under my belt. And I didn't really, how do I want to say, I didn't really pay attention to networking like I should have. And I really did it the hard way. And I don't recommend that anybody does it the way that I did it back then. And look, we go back, this was 1993, right? So, what we have available to us now: cell phones, email, not only laptop computers, iPads, smartphones. So many different ways of communicating, LinkedIn, other sources of social media. Back then, it was a landline, maybe a beeper if somebody called you, and that was it. So it was really hard. And I didn't really network like I should have. I didn't go to any chamber of commerce events. And as when my daughter was born and she kind of got involved, well, I kind of thought that, well, going to her baseball, basketball, volleyball, going to those games and mingling with parents, I thought that was networking. It wasn't. So for the longest time, I really didn't network too much. And then I think it might have been maybe 8 or 10 years ago, I started to do it a lot more. I got involved. I got involved in some different organizations. I got involved in a few different networking groups. I've ultimately, with my business partner, we've created our own networking group. We call it the Boca Raton Masterminds. I do a couple other things, and it's very, very important. So if someone's in any profession that requires face to face and requires clientele, financial advisors, attorneys, CPAs, you have to network because you never know. And it's okay to network with your peers because there may be a situation that they can't handle, they want to give to you, or something that you can't handle or don't want to handle and pass on to them. Plus, you make a friend, you stay top of mind. Networking is huge. I don't know, where I would be if I didn't take that step and really decide that I wanted to invest some time in it. And I do a bunch of different groups. I'll go to different events. I'm looking to join another group come July this year or August. So I think it's extremely important to be involved in the community that way because when you're networking, you're not just going to walk into a room and collect 25 business cards and call them all the next day. It just doesn't work that way anymore. And I've seen people try to do that and they just struggle. You have to build a relationship. And before anybody is going to want to work with you, they want to see some consistency from you. Do they like you enough? Do they trust you? But also, do they have the confidence in you to get done what you say you're going to do for them? I think that's one thing that people miss. Know you, like you, trust you, great. But if I don't have confidence in you, the other three don't really matter.
So, in terms of when you're going out into the world, and like you said, it's of extreme importance to be doing networking. How do you sort of find those people who you can have confidence in? What sort of traits should people have in order to be like, wow, I mark off those three things that you said, and I also can have confidence in that person. What kind of traits do you look within people to be like, that's my guy or girl?
How do they answer questions? If I'm getting a lot of one word answers, I'm really not learning a lot about you. Just like if you were to ask me, for example, a very common question at a networking event is, how's business? And if I say busy, well, what does that really say? It says I'm busy, but what does that really mean? You don't know. So you have to change that answer. You also can't just give your title when someone says, what do you do? If I was an attorney and I said, well, I'm a lawyer. Okay, well, there's a lot of different kinds of lawyers. What is it? What kind of law do I practice? So over time, I've learned how to answer those questions. It could be related to something that I do specifically as an advisor. It could be related to something that, a meeting that I just had. And I might be able to say like, well, Nate, when people struggle with how to figure out if they have enough money for retirement, they want to know if they have enough. Well, that's what I do. So you can kind of tailor your answer to that question. So, how do they answer questions? Are they willing to communicate? Are they open-minded? Are you able to carry a conversation and not feel like you're dragging information out from them? And I think I can pretty much get along with just about anybody, any age bracket. Yes, I've been in the business for a really long time. That doesn't mean that everybody I deal with is 5 or 7 years front or back of my age. I've got a lot of clients that are younger. We don't really have a lot of clients that are either my age or older. We just don't. I don't know if it's just because we gravitate well to a slightly younger group of people, but if you can talk and be able to carry good conversation and be interested in what they have to say. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. So ask them questions so they can talk about themselves.
Oh, Frank, I know that all too well. I definitely know that people love to talk about themselves. There's really nothing wrong with it. I think it's a great thing. People have interesting things to say, and I want to find out. But speaking of lawyers, speaking of attorneys, like everyone heard at the beginning when I had listed out all the things that you did and what I thought you had graduated from, the University of Illinois, Chicago. You are indeed not an attorney. You never went to law school. You never practiced law. I have to ask, did you ever consider law school at all at any point in your life?
Yes.
When was that?
After I had been in this current career that I'm in, because I've started to work, I'll say primarily with attorneys, I've said to myself, in my next life, I'll come back as one.
So
I watch all the shows. I know that they're not real. I mean, and Suits is my favorite. I love Harvey. He's my hero. But I know that that's not real law. But I just gravitate to them.
it's the sort of moxie that they have, that they carry about themselves in their everyday. It's like the
Yeah.
cool attorney. You want to be that guy. So I understand that more than anything. That was a big inspiration of mine, seeing those shows. I'm like, oh, why wouldn't I want to be like that? Those guys look awesome. But when was there the point in your career when you decided to start working with attorneys more and start to really focus and dive headfirst into sort of the legal space and the legal industry?
So I've been working with attorneys, I'll say, not in depth my whole career, but a number of years ago, I was given what was called an orphan. And an orphan means someone who had an advisor, that advisor left, now they don't have an advisor. So it was a family law attorney, and I went to see her, and she was a little rough around the edges initially, shall we say. And I guess I was a little rough around the edges back. I just didn't want to get beat up, so to speak. And she wasn't that bad, but she asked me a lot of tough questions. I was either able to answer them or tell her that I would get back to her. And then things just kind of settled down. She gave me a referral. That person gave me a referral. All of a sudden, a couple of the guys at the office were like, "Hey, I understand that you've been doing some work with attorneys. I know an attorney. Can we work this case together?" Sure. And then before you know it, years go by, and all of a sudden, 60% to 70% of my clients are in legal in some form or another. So I don't want to say it happened overnight. It didn't really happen overnight. It kind of came over a long period of time. But I think it was about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I said, okay, this is a niche that I really want to pursue for a number of different reasons. I get along with them. They like me. We like each other. They believe, most of them, in what we do, which is an advantage, right? And it just kind of took off from there. And then I started hanging out where they hang out, joining different groups and associations. The mastermind group that I have, there's 16 of us. I think there's 10 of them that are attorneys. So all the different categories are there. It just kind of evolved over time because like anybody, I think if you specialize, I think you can really stand out in a crowd, right? The doctor that's the general practitioner may not make as much as the oral surgeon or the neurosurgeon or the anesthesiologist, right? So with financial advising, I think it's the same way. Pick a niche. And if there's something that I don't do or I can't do, I've got a team behind me and we'll make sure that it gets done. But at the very least, I can supervise and kind of be the quarterback behind everything that's going on.
So within this sort of pivot towards putting more time and energy and effort into working with attorneys, was it sort of just this is where the wind is blowing, so let's see where the ship takes us? Or was it a little more intentional, like, oh, I see that there's this opening here and I want to see what I could do with it?
It was an evaluation of our business, and it was evaluation of the client base and looking at the clients. And sometimes there's these exercises where someone will say, look at your last 10 or 15, I hate to use the word sales, but that's just what I'm going to say. Look at their last 20 sales. Who are they? Right? What's their profession? Where did they come from? What do they do? And see if there's a pattern. And the more, 10 of them, all right, 7 are attorneys. The next 10, 6 are attorneys. Every time we did a batch, at least half, if not a little bit more, were in the legal space. So I was like, well, this seems just kind of natural to fall into that and make that a commitment to niche in.
So what's the nature of the work that you do with attorneys primarily? What sorts of things are you, I guess, giving in value to the attorneys that you work with?
Well, without going into a long, drawn out answer, a lot of what we do focuses on, I'll say, minimizing taxes. No one likes to pay them. Sometimes people pay more than they should. So we look at different strategies where we can minimize them, not only currently, but in the future. We also look at managing risk. If I can't work because I'm sick or hurt, where's my income going to come from? If I don't wake up tomorrow morning, what happens to my family? If I have an extended healthcare issue and I need help that's beyond what my significant other or children can do for me, how am I going to pay for that? Will I have enough for retirement? Right? Where's the money going to come from? So if I could give an overall kind of definition, it involves financial planning, but we do risk management and wealth management. We do it, because you can't have one without the other. It's like building a house without a foundation. You would never do that. You're not going to start with the second floor, right? So same thing with financial planning. You're not going to start without managing the risk to some degree, right? And I'm not saying that certain products are the answer to everything, but we have to look at asset, location and then asset allocation. It's really two different things.
So this is more of a self-interested question, to be honest, but is there anything distinct between like doing financial planning for a regular person and then doing financial planning for an attorney? Like is there something different about the nature of the work or sort of the planning of it that differentiates from like the regular person?
So regular person could mean a lot of different things, right?
Well, I'm just non-lawyer, I
And we
guess.
don't want
Let
to
me
put
phrase it that
people,
way.
yeah,
Of
right.
course, of
So,
course.
yeah. Uh, one thing that they have in common with us is income fluctuates. It can go up, it can go down. So a lot of it relates to cash flow and budgeting. And sometimes when people hear that word, they're like, oh no, you're going to handcuff me. You're going to prevent me from spending my, no, that's not what it is. One thing that we want to know is as the money comes in, we got to see how it also goes out. So cash flow planning is very important. And that's really for any business owner. I think that's not anything brand new, but attorneys are faced with, I think, some challenges that maybe some others aren't. And time is a big constraint for them. You're running a practice, you're hiring people, you're training them, you're working cases, you're doing research, you're communicating with your paralegal, your team, your associates, you're trying to go out and get business, you're meeting with the client, maybe you're going to court if you're in litigation. I mean, there's like 10 to 12 different hats. What's one thing that you're not paying attention to besides maybe your family life because you're trying to build your business? You're not paying attention to your finances. And you need someone on your team that you can confide in, that you trust, that you have confidence in, that can help you with your finances. It seems like a big workload of things to do at the beginning. It's not. And once we get started, it really becomes a lot smoother after that, because then the bulk of the work falls to us. And it's our responsibility to keep the attorney up to speed, up to date, and bring the ideas, number one, but also communicate on a regular basis so that they know where they stand. They know if we're, achieving the goal, are we reaching the goal? What do we got to do to get to the goal? What changes do we have to make? No, it's not as though we're going to put a product in place and see you later, never talk to you for 5 years. That's just not how it works, or it shouldn't work that way. So it's constant communication. And because of time constraints, a lot of times they don't have the time. And I'm used to 2 or 3 reminders. Nate, I know you're busy, but we got to tackle A and B. Let me know when we can do that. Nate, I reached out to you a couple weeks ago. I saw that you were in Disney. I saw that you went to Colorado. I saw that you were in Europe. I know you're back. We got to get together. So it's a lot of politely prodding. I call myself politely persistent, because if I don't do that, in a lot of cases, you're just gonna let it go. And a year's going to go by and you're going to wonder what happened. 5 years is going to go by and you're going to wonder what happened. So we're sensitive to the fact that time is a constraint. I also am sensitive to the fact that you may not make your decision right away because you like to do research, right? When you're in college, what do? You read, you research, you study this case, you study that case, you come across something that we would like you to do, you want to read it. So you don't make a decision right away. Sometimes you don't make a decision for a month. Sometimes it makes sense and you're, oh, yeah, okay, let's go and let's do it. It runs the total spectrum. It used to bother me though when a decision wasn't made right away. And then they would come back with asking all these different questions and highlighting certain things in a proposal. I'm like, is it really this necessary to do that? Once the light bulb went off in my head about what they're really all about with the research and the reading, okay, I get it now. And I don't want to say I was defensive before, but I was less confrontational, maybe, if that's the right word. And that's a strong word, but I was more in tune to why they were responding and why they were doing it the way they were doing it.
With this lawyer clientele, this is more of a question for the attorneys out there listening, but what is an ideal client for you? What do you look in someone or an attorney who you're working with where they have these certain traits, they do the certain things that just make your job all the easier?
It's a great question. A lot of the attorneys that we work with are sole practitioners or small to I guess small to mid-size firm owners. And a lot of times we'll work with partners and the associates, but a lot of times what they come to us because they're scrambled. They bought a product from Nate. They bought a product from John. They bought a product from Jane. They do this with Susie. Does everything match? How does everything go together? Frank, get me organized. So that could be one aspect. Another could be, and this happens a lot, is attorneys work for a big or a bigger law firm. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, the culture, the methodology, the life work balance, which I think is a fake thing. It's life, right? I don't know how you balance each other, but they go out on their own and now they need help putting things together, or they form a partnership with somebody else and they need help with, some of the things that they either left behind. How can they transition that over? Or, I don't have a retirement plan anymore. Can you help me start one? I don't have income protection anymore. Can you help me start one? Things like that. So, and we just kind of gravitate to each other, but that's where I can be very, very helpful in making your transition smoother. You worry about the business. I might need to connect you to various people in the legal field who aren't attorneys, but who will help you do some of the things that you shouldn't be doing. Like you shouldn't be writing your checks. You shouldn't be doing your accounting. You should not be doing those kind of things which take you away from doing what you're supposed to do. And if you don't know anybody, I can connect you because I've made myself well connected in the market to people that can help you. So I can also be a great resource to people and make those various connections. I was just talking to an attorney today, and they were asking me, if I know of any realtors because I need some more connections for some of the work that I do, and I need to meet some new realtors. Yeah, matter of fact, I do know a couple that you may not know. I gave out the names, and I know I don't know them. I said, great, I'll connect you. So there's a lot of different ways to be valuable to a client, to an attorney, than just doing their financial planning.
Yeah, I agree that people should not be doing their accounting. I had the misfortune of taking accounting this year. Never again. Won't be doing that ever again. And I definitely will be hiring an accountant. I'll tell you that. But you said something
Nice.
before, and it tipped me off to something, and I won't let you get away with it because you said you don't think work-life balance exists. So I asked, what do you mean by that? It's just life itself. Let's dive into this. What do you mean by
I never really gave it too much thought. although I think since COVID, everybody's talking about work-life balance. Do you come into the office? Do you work from home? Is it one or the other? Is it a hybrid situation? And I understand people have children. Sometimes the children are younger. So for a while, people were forced to stay home, and it's a big juggling act. And I get that, and I can appreciate that. I mean, my daughter's 30 years old, so she's obviously out on her own, a professional. That was never an issue for me, but I was I'm connected to an attorney that people may or may not know. His name is Ben Glass. They're in Virginia, and he had a post earlier this year talking about work-life balance, and he said it's not. And I'm summarizing, so please don't quote me, Ben, if you're listening. It's I don't remember exactly what you said, but something along the lines of it's not work-life balance. It's not work. Life it's not work life balance. It's just life. And then you have to make it your own and make it work for you based upon what you want. And I like to say that money is a tool. Does more money mean you can buy more things? Sure. Should you? I don't know. But money is a tool. And if done right, money gives you the freedom to make the choices of how you want to live your life. And our motto is living your life with abundance and dignity. So you want to live your life, work less, golf on Wednesdays, and not see any clients? That's fine if that's what you want to do, as long as your business is sufficiently running and it's giving you the income where you can do that. If not, then you got to kind of go back to work a little bit. But I don't think it's one or the other. I just think it's life, and then you have to figure out how you want to live it. No problem working 80 hours a week if that's what you really want to do. And sometimes when you start out your own firm, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would agree that, maybe 60, 80 hours a week to get started, that might be the case. I think you're lucky if you only work 40, but if you're out on your own, it's your firm. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I love that you connected it back to the motto that you and your company have. I think that was great marketing there. But what I saw that was interesting looking through the sort of experiences that you have, you're a member at Personal CFO Network. What is that?
That's one of the coaching groups that I'm in, and it's led by a former financial advisor, where we're trying to create what we want to call ourselves as personal CFOs. I could call myself a financial advisor. I'm in a pool of thousands of other people, right? So personal CFO is just someone else that's quote unquote on your payroll, but is your personal chief financial officer, handling your personal financial things, right? That's all. Just a little slight definition about how that goes. And he's just trying to create an army, so to speak, of personal CFOs.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the littlest things can make the biggest changes. So
Right.
a sort of reframe like that can motivate and bring a lot more people to it and be like, okay, this actually makes more sense than just having some financial advisor chase me around and have all my money. Instead,
Yeah.
they're there for you. They're here to
Right.
help your livelihood and your assets, not just everything that goes about it. So I love that. I love that very much. But Frank, I have to ask, through all the coaching that you do, all the financial advising, helping all these people, was there any intention behind the fact of helping people, even though it is just managing money, but you are helping people maybe at very difficult times, at very great times of their life, but what is sort of that visceral feeling when you're out there helping people, improving people's lives, making them live easier?
I can share a story that just happened recently with a client. And I put a post up today about decisions. And sometimes a no or a not now, those are still decisions, but all decisions have consequences, right? So if you decide to do something and move forward, the consequence of that is you've improved your life, you've improved your financial situation, You now feel at ease. You have a level of comfort not moving forward with something or saying no to something. Well, what's the decision? What's the consequence of saying no? The best example for that I can give is you decided not to buy income protection because you don't think you can afford it. Well, you probably need to buy it because you can't afford it. Because if something happens, there's a big problem, right? We have a client and started working with them maybe 10 years ago and came to us and said, it's time for me to grow up. Okay. Started to put their ducks in order, as we say, did all the planning on both sides, the risk management, the wealth management, done very well for themselves. They're a business owner, doing very, very well. And some of the things that we did needed some prodding and pushing. And like I said, I'm politely persistent. And I would give reasons, and I'm trying not to say a name, right, for confidentiality. And if you don't do this, what's going to happen if you don't do that, what's your plan when that happens? So fortunately, this client took our advice. And 2 weeks ago, come to find out that while in another part of the world, had a massive heart attack. Survived it, and now needs a total lifestyle change. Had we not been as persistent as we were to doing all the different things that we talked about, there may not be the financial comfort that they have, not only themselves, but the family, because of what we did. So it's a really noble profession when you get down to it. But that was a situation that saddened me, number one, when I heard the news, but also comforted me in knowing that I have no regrets. I don't have to beat myself up because I wasn't persistent to get them to do this or to do that. And when you have a good relationship like that with a person and you're able to work well together, then you know you've done right.
Law students, are you feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or short on time in law school? Maybe you just want someone to show you a step-by-step framework to master the topics you're learning in your classes. I know the pressure you're under, and I've got the perfect solution for you. My course, the Law School Operating System, is proven to help you conquer law school with confidence and ease.
Created by Lisa Blasser, a former guest on the podcast and founder of the Law School Success Institute, this course breaks down every subject into manageable main topics that you run through a comprehensive study system to thoroughly prepare you for class and final exams. No more feeling like you need to know everything all at once in the beginning.
But that's not all, Nate. The Law School Operating System also teaches you how to schedule your studying and time effectively. For every topic, you'll know which study step you're on and when you'll complete it every week of your semester. No more mad dash cram sessions, more time with your loved ones. And with my system, you'll walk into your exams knowing you've given 100% of yourself, that there's nothing more you could have done to succeed, and there's no better confidence than that.
Lisa breaks it down like this: one class, one list of main topics, and one system to master each topic. With recorded and live sessions for students available on her website and partnerships with law schools nationwide, the Law School Operating System is here to help you thrive from day one to the final exam. Ready to take control of your law school journey and operate at your full potential in law school? Visit www.lisablasser.com today and enroll in the Law School Operating System. Be sure to use code LSOSNATE10 at checkout for 10% off the recorded course. That is code LSOSNATE10 at checkout. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I mean, fantastic story. It's moments like those that keep people going in this world, of course. So
Absolutely.
I love that story very much. But Frank, we're down to our last 5 questions. The first of the 5 questions is something I've recognized on my journey throughout this podcast. And I'm going to change the question a little bit for you because it may not apply to you directly. It is sort of the tech stack question per se, as I usually ask attorneys when they come on here, and law students as well, what sort of tech they use at their firms or their respective firms that they work at that helps improve efficiency, cut some overhead, sort of the new AI technologies, the software technologies, all that stuff. And I can see from your face you're clearly not a fan. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
can completely change the question here. Why are you not a fan?
no, it's not that I'm not a fan, but some of the things that they use, we have, literally no use for, I guess I'll say. Chat GPT can be valuable, right? LinkedIn is very valuable. We use Salesforce for our client database. And then we obviously have our own software for running different proposals and illustrations and evaluations. So it's a totally different tech stack than I think an attorney would have.
Of course, of course. Are there any other ones? I'll let you keep exploring your own tech stack here because I'm interested.
There's a tool we use called Asset Map, which really is pretty neat because it puts everything that you have on one page. There's documentation behind it. So you want the 60-page financial plan? We'll do it. But most of the time, people just, what do I have? And then let's pick 2 or 3 things to focus on and what do I need to do to get there? So that's been a great tool for us.
Interesting, very interesting. But fourth to last question here, live on Lawyers in the Making podcast. Frank, what are your book recommendations for people? Doesn't have to be about the law or financial planning, just some of your favorite books you've ever read, something you give a gift to someone.
All right, how many do I get? 3? 4?
You can say as many as you want.
All right, let's go with 3. It's called Winning by Tim Grover, and it's spelled W1NNING.
I like that.
Tim Grover, former personal coach for Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I mean, if you want to get pumped up, if you need something to motivate you and get your head out of your, you know what, that's a book for you. It's a great book. I love it. I mean, I read it cover to cover pretty quick. Another one that I just read recently, it's called Unreasonable Hospitality. And a lot of people are starting to talk about that on social media.
I think in the last like 3 or 4 podcasts I've done, every single person has said that. And like before that, like honestly, I think I've had about 20 to 25 people recommend that book, but continue.
I think Ron Latz mentioned it, and
He did.
he and I learned about it at the same mastermind that we were at about that. Another one, trying to think if I could pick a book that I really, really liked. 10x is easier than 2x. That's a good book.
Never heard of that one. The Winning and 10x is easier than 2x. I've not heard from. So I always love a new recommendation. I eat books for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I'm always ready to get new ones. But third to last question here, Frank. What are the types of things that you consume, not food, consume on a daily basis, either through social media, so Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Reddit, YouTube, Substack, Facebook? The list grows every single time because I forget something. Any podcasts you listen to that you would recommend to people? What is crossing the transom of Frank's mind on a daily basis?
Boy, that's a very loaded question. So yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. Facebook here and there. I don't really use it too much. I mostly use it to kind of keep up with friends and maybe clients and see what they're up to. Twitter, mostly just for the sports. I used to be heavily involved, but I got tired of, everybody has to be the expert and know it all. So I got tired of the arguments. Instagram, I don't really use. As far as social media, that's where that's at. Spotify, I love music. I love all different kinds, but if you have me narrowed down to one particular brand or kind, I'm Springsteen all day, all night. Listen to him anytime. And for podcasts, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Once I came across yours, I've started listening to yours. Um, I listen to a bunch of different attorney podcasts, mostly because I want to know what's going on in the attorney world. So there's one called "Be That Lawyer" by Steve Fretzin. I listen to that a lot. Um, I'm scrolling through my phone if that's okay.
No, no, go ahead. This isn't there's cheating allowed.
The Managing Partners podcast with Kevin Daisy. And there's one by Scott Snellings. The Driven Crowd. As it relates to my industry, I listen to Billion Dollar Backstory with Stacey Havener. She's a great person. I hope she listens to this. She's a great person, very knowledgeable and influential on LinkedIn, and I love her stuff. And Michael Kitces has a podcast. There's no lawyer's going to want to listen to that one, probably, because it's like an hour and a half. It's all financially related. And then I'll pick up on a couple sports ones here and there.
So I want to return back to something that you said all the way at the beginning, because I remember everything. But you are indeed a Cubs fan, but you're also an Orioles fan. How did that happen?
Well, if we got time for this, here goes.
We definitely do. I'll tell you what.
I have an older brother. He's 10 years older than me, and we're Greek heritage. So years ago, there were two, he says three, I can't remember the third one, but there were two Greek baseball players on the Baltimore Orioles. So he just gravitated to them, started to like them. And I'm going to show my age a little bit here. In 1966, they went to the World Series for the first time. And they swept the Dodgers 4-0. A complete underdog, never should have happened, but it did. And my dad won 2 tickets to go to the World Series to see games 3 and 4 in Baltimore. So obviously took my brother. I'm hearing the name Baltimore Orioles. And then they also had a player by the name of Frank Robinson. Well, his name is Frank. My name is Frank. The rest is just kind of history. So I've been a lifelong fan of them since I was very small.
But you do have the dual sports fanship there. So you support both teams.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll have a problem if they both get into the World Series. That'll probably never happen, but
yeah, that was the first thing that came into my mind. What if they were to play each other, who would you root for?
Well, the Orioles haven't won one in a long time, so I'm going to have to go with them.
All right. I know I'm not an avid baseball watcher. My whole family's a Yankees fan, so we're always watching the Yankees, and they're pretty good this year. Yeah, I'm sorry. They're pretty good.
I'm surprised we're talking to each other.
Listen, I've heard they're pretty good this year, so I've been watching a couple games here and there. But I know the Orioles because my former roommate Mac, shout out him, but he's a huge baseball guy. Actually, a Mariners fan from Queens, New York. Doesn't make any sense.
Wow.
I know, exactly. It was because the show iCarly. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a pretty I'm showing my age, pretty old kid show. But it was based in Seattle. So
okay.
All right, screw it. Mariners, which which he always tells me is one of the worst decisions he's ever made in his life. But
it's all right.
But I've seen that the Orioles, they got a lot of young players. So it's gonna be going pretty well for them soon enough. But second to last question here, Frank. What does an ideal Friday night and Sunday morning look for Frank in beautiful Florida?
An ideal Friday night is going out to dinner, being out in town, maybe sitting outside, maybe sitting on the water, having a nice meal, a drink with some good friends, enjoying the weather. Nothing better than that. A Sunday morning, grabbing a cup of coffee, sitting on the balcony, taking in the fresh air before it gets too hot, maybe listening to a podcast, reading a book, or just sitting and letting my mind clear, or coming up with some ideas.
I mean, that sounds fantastic. It is the dream. I hope to be there as well, sitting on my balcony in Florida one day, taking in the weather, looking out at the ocean. Oh, I can't wait. I'm so
Yep.
excited. But final question here, Frank. Do this at the end of every single episode, but what are your words of wisdom for the aspiring law students, the current law students, the legal professionals, and pretty much anyone out there?
I wasn't ready for that one. Words of wisdom for people in law.
Or pretty much anyone. Just general words of wisdom, if I were to put it.
Don't sleep on networking. I think networking is more valuable than people give credit to. And when you're out there networking, it's not about walking into a room and meeting 15 or 20 people. It's having a conversation with 2 or 3, and then seeing if you can take the next step to actually meet with them in person over a cup of coffee or lunch. But I think networking is way undervalued and way underappreciated. And if you're a law student or you're early on in your law career, it helps to know people that are your peers. It also helps to know people in other professions. I call my mastermind group, that's my room of people. If my clients need anything, I can go to that room and I've pretty much got it all covered.
Well, I'm happy, ecstatic actually, that I always come on here and talk about the importance of networking, ask people about it, because that was beautifully said, Frank. But that is the podcast. So thank you so much, Frank, for coming on here, spreading your wisdom, spreading your experiences. And for everyone out there listening, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check us out, lawyersinthemaking.substack.com. Lawyers in the Making, one word, substack.com. And I will see you all in the next one.